Yasas. This is an essay that I wrote on the 31st of March 2012, and it's called The Disciplining of Children. In this essay, I shall discuss several forms of disciplining children, including hitting/spanking, time out, grounding, and taking things away. Note that, for the sake of being concise, I'm using one gender, but this applies to boys and girls alike. Hitting is less common, at least in America, than it used to be, but it's still a widely used form of discipline to one degree or another. I personally believe in torture for adults who have committed certain crimes, including abuse of children, the elderly, the disabled, and/or animals, rape, and murder. I think 16 is old enough to understand the consequences of such actions and to suffer the appropriate punishments for them if committed. But there's a huge difference between punishing a violent criminal and punishing a child. So the remedies must reflect this. Very rarely do I ever support the hitting of children. Even in cases where I do, I strongly believe it should be limited to a single smack with the hand. Any use of other objects, such as belts, brushes, spoons, flip-flops, or even shirts or rags, constitutes abuse to me. Sadly, there are actually still young people in the world who support such actions as a means of discipline. Some of my examples above came from them. Once you leave marks on a child that don't go away after half an hour or so, you've become an abuser and should be punished accordingly. I'm sure that, knowing that I'm an ethnikofron, some of you will point out that the colonels most definitely hit their children, probably with objects. But the youngest of them would have been 93. Clearly, they came from a different time when this kind of parenting strategy was accepted and also grew up in villages, so weren't really exposed to the outside world. Not all modern ideas are bad, and I should hope that we've progressed in that area of thinking since then. Personally, the only time I could see myself really hitting a child would be if he ran out into the street. I would probably grab him and smack him once across the face. In my case, it would be done out of extreme fear, not only for the safety of the child, but due to the fact that I wouldn't be able to stop him from doing it again, since I couldn't see him. It's far better for a child to receive a single smack, or even two, from a frightened parent, than to die after being hit by a car. Another such example, actually two of them, would be if he touched the stove, or tried to go into the medicine cabinet to take some medicine, because both of those are also life-threatening. And just on a note above, when I mentioned torture for adults and child abuse, okay, if someone did, smack a child across the back once with a belt or something like that, no, I wouldn't torture him in the same way that I would someone who, repeatedly beat the child until he went unconscious. I would give him a warning or a fine or something, but I reserve torture for serious abusers who really lay into the child and harm him. That's never ever acceptable. I don't care what the situation is. The idea of time out or sitting still is often used on children today who misbehave. Its effectiveness depends on several factors. Some children are very social and love being with their friends, playing games, etc. So if they have to sit still, it's very upsetting to them, and they are able to quickly learn the lesson. Others are very imaginative, so can pretend or think of other things while they are in time out. This is especially true of introverts who may not wish to play with other children, but rather to get away from them. But even when the child hates it, constant use of this form of discipline can be harmful. At best, the child will stop fearing it and may think that he can go back to having fun after sitting for a few minutes. In the worst case, it could make children afraid that, no matter what they do, they'll get in trouble. So, as with all forms of discipline, this must be used only when appropriate. One of the best forms of discipline, in my opinion, for serious or recurring bad behavior is taking things away and making the child earn them back. Considering all the toys and technological gear that children have today, this can be an interesting form of punishment. It may be one or two beloved things at first, but if the bad behavior continues, more things can be taken. But they should never include novels or educational books, and must be things that the child truly loves and will miss. As the child's behavior improves, these things can be returned. If only one or two things have been taken, it's best to let the child know that he is on a probational period, a few days to a week. At any time, should the bad behavior return, the object or objects must be taken away again. But once the time has passed, you should let him know that you are proud, and that he has learned responsibility and the lesson that you were trying to teach. If, however, you truly believe that he has learned this beforehand, and if he comes to you with a genuine apology, you should consider starting the probationary period earlier than planned, or perhaps giving the object back. Remember, the ultimate goal of any form of disciplining children is not simply punishment, but to get them to understand what they did wrong and why it angered you. One of the most drastic forms of punishing a child is grounding. This may, in very severe cases, be used in conjunction with taking things away, including computer time. While this won't work in the same way for an introvert, he may still like to go to certain places, to enjoy nature, or to read. Reading should never be discouraged, nor should going to the library, but in that case, if possible, the parent should take the name of a book or two and get it for the child so that he feels limited and cannot enjoy the freedom of spending time in the library. For most children, however, merely not being able to play with their friends is their idea of torture. So it can be a very effective means of getting a point across if used wisely. If, during a grounding or a time when many things are taken away, a child starts to complain, there's an easy and painless solution. Make him do chores. Of course, this doesn't mean anything too strenuous or for hours at a time, but there's bound to be a whole list of things that children can do to remain busy and help their parents. Writing something X amount of times is also a decent form of punishment, provided the amount isn't extreme and the sentence isn't too long. Doing this will also leave an impression in the child's mind of what it is that he mustn't do. Blind children can do this as well, using a slate and stylus, though their times should be reduced, because it's really far more difficult to use a slate and stylus than it is to use a pen. So if, for example, I had a child write something 20 or 30 times, I might have a blind child write it 10 or 15 times. It still gets the point across, and by the end of that, believe me, he'll learn. While not exactly related to methods of disciplining, rules are an important part of a child's life. That said, I believe that the best way to teach a child something is to live it. If you tell him not to litter, don't throw things wherever. If you say that he must make his bed, then you should do likewise. If you believe that children shouldn't use profanity, don't do it around them and use the excuse that, since you're an adult, it's fine for you but not for them. Respect is also key. Don't expect your child to respect Aunt Maria if you keep calling her a jerk. And don't treat your child as if he is worth any less just because he is younger than you. If you wish to be respected, you need to give it in return. At the same time, you need to enforce the idea that you're not your child's friend, but that you're his parent. He'll make plenty of friends in the future, but there's only one you. He needs to know that, and that he can rely on you to stick around, unlike friends who come and go. While you should be tough and stand your ground, you should also take the time to point out your child's accomplishments. If all your child sees you is as if your child only sees you as a disciplinarian and fears rather than loves you, you are not doing your job. To conclude, there are many methods of disciplining children besides hitting and violence. Some should be used more frequently than others, and each has its own benefits and drawbacks. Keeping this in mind and bringing up a child with love and respect is almost guaranteed to uh, to ensure positive results for all.